My wife Jenna had always been playful, teasing, joking, sending funny memes. It was just part of her charm, part of what made me fall in love with her. Our house was always filled with laughter, but one night that all changed. The laughter died, and a chilling silence took its place. She was in the shower, the sound of the water a familiar, comforting backdrop to our evening. I was on the couch, scrolling through my phone, just relaxing. That's when her iPad, lying next to me, lit up. The screen glowed in the dim light, and a message preview popped up. I glanced at it without thinking. "Can't wait to see you again. Same place." My chest tightened. My first thought was, it's probably nothing. A friend, a colleague. But then another message popped up, right below the first one. Last time was unforgettable. The winking emoji seemed to mock me from the screen. My heart started pounding, a heavy, frantic beat against my ribs. I looked at the contact name displayed above the messages. Coach Daniel Gym. Coach Daniel, her personal trainer. At first, my mind scrambled for an innocent explanation. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe they were just talking about personal training sessions. Maybe he was just one of those overly friendly guys, flirting with a client, and she was just ignoring it. It had to be that. It couldn't be anything else. Jenna loved me. We were happy, weren't we? But the seed of doubt was planted, and it was growing fast, its roots wrapping around my heart. I couldn't just let it go. I had to know. With trembling hands, I picked up her iPad. My thumb hovered over the message notification, my mind at war with itself. Part of me screamed not to look, to just put the iPad down and pretend I saw nothing. But the other part, the part that needed to know the truth, was stronger. I tapped the screen. The full conversation opened up, a Pandora's box of our life. And as I read, my breath caught in my throat. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was so much worse. The screen was filled with flirty texts, late-night messages that stretched back weeks, maybe even months. There were inside jokes I didn't understand, pet names I'd never heard her use. Each word was a tiny shard of glass, embedding itself deeper into my heart. Then I saw it. The message that shattered everything. Her telling him, "If my husband ever knew, I'd be dead." My own wife. Writing about me as if I were some obstacle, some problem to be managed. And his reply, so casual, so confident, he won't. Friday is ours. Friday, that was 2 days from now. 2 days, the word echoed in my head. Friday, they had a plan. While I was at work or thinking she was out with her friends, they had their own world, their own plans. Ours, he had said. The word felt like a physical blow. I kept scrolling, my eyes burning, my vision blurring. I saw photos they'd exchanged. Nothing explicit, but intimate. Selfies of her at the gym, him flexing his muscles. Pictures of meals they'd shared at places I'd never been with her. It was a whole secret life, running parallel to ours, a life I had no idea existed. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I shared my bed with every night, was a stranger. Just then, the sound of the shower stopped. The sudden silence was deafening. I quickly closed the iPad, placing it back on the couch exactly where it had been, my movements stiff and robotic. My mind was a whirlwind of betrayal, anger, and a profound, hollowing sadness. The bathroom door opened, and Jenna came out, humming a cheerful little tune. She was wrapped in her fluffy white towel, her hair piled on top of her head, droplets of water tracing paths down her neck. She looked beautiful. She looked innocent. She looked like the woman I had married. She smiled at me, a warm, easy smile that used to make my heart leap. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice light and happy. "You look a little pale." I forced my lips into a smile, a grotesque imitation of the real thing. It felt like my face would crack from the effort. "Yeah," I managed to choke out, my own voice sounding distant and foreign. "Yeah, just tired." "Long day at work?" She nodded, accepting my lie without a second thought. She walked over to our bedroom, still humming that little tune, completely oblivious to the fact that our world had just been torn apart. I just stared at her back as she walked away. I stared at the woman I loved, the woman who was planning to betray me in 2 days. And inside, I felt something break. It wasn't a loud, dramatic shatter. It was a quiet, final snap. Something had already died in that room. The trust, the love, the future I thought we had. It was all gone, replaced by the sickening glow of an iPad screen, and the words, "Friday is ours." I sat there in the silence, completely alone, with a secret that was slowly eating me alive. The question wasn't if our marriage was over. I already knew the answer to that. The question was, what was I going to do about Friday? It all started on a Friday morning. The sun was streaming through the kitchen window, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. She kissed my cheek, a quick, almost forgettable peck. "I'll be doing inventory at the store today," she said, her voice breezy. "Might be late. Inventory?" My mind snagged on the word. She worked at a small, high-end boutique. They sold maybe a dozen dresses a week. They didn't have inventory days. It was the kind of lie that was so lazy it was almost insulting. As soon as the front door clicked shut, a cold dread started to seep into the room, chilling the warm morning air. I stood there for a long time, just listening to the silence of the house, a silence that suddenly felt heavy and suffocating. My feet carried me to her office before my brain even caught up. Her laptop was sitting on the desk, closed. A sleek silver rectangle holding a world of secrets I was suddenly desperate to uncover. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. I knew the password. We'd always said we had no secrets, that we were an open book. What a joke. The screen blinked to life, displaying her neatly organized desktop. For a moment, I almost closed it, almost walked away. A voice in my head screamed at me to stop, that whatever I found, I couldn't unfind it. But a stronger, darker curiosity pushed me forward. I clicked on her email icon. The inbox loaded. A list of mundane messages, promotions from stores, a newsletter, a note from her mother, and then I saw it. It was an email from a hotel chain. It's one of those fancy places downtown we only ever talked about going to for a special occasion. The subject line was simple: "Your reservation confirmation." My heart started a frantic, painful rhythm against my ribs. I clicked it open. There it was, in stark black and white. A reservation for tonight. Room 614. For 2 guests. The name on the reservation was hers. And next to it, the second guest's name. Daniel. Daniel. Her work friend. The one she'd been texting late at night. The one she said I was being paranoid about. The air rushed out of my lungs and the room started to spin. I felt a strange detachment, like I was watching a movie of someone else's life falling apart. I read the details over and over, as if staring at them long enough would change the words, but they stayed the same. Tonight, room 614. Her name. And Daniel's. The rest of the day was a blur. I don't remember eating or drinking. I just remember the feeling of a cold, heavy stone sitting in my stomach. The afternoon sun eventually faded into the bruised colors of evening. The city lights began to twinkle, each one a tiny, indifferent star in a galaxy that no longer included me. At around 7, I got in my car. I didn't have a plan, not really. I just knew I had to see it for myself. I needed proof, something tangible to make the nightmare real. I drove to the hotel, my heart pounding so hard against my chest it felt like thunder echoing in the small space of the car. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I parked across the street, in the shadows, where I could see the entrance clearly. And then, I waited. Waiting was the hardest part. Every car that pulled up sent a fresh jolt of adrenaline through me. Every person who walked toward the entrance made my breath catch in my throat. At exactly 7:48 p.m., a taxi pulled up, and she got out. My wife, she wasn't wearing her work clothes. She had her hair curled, the way she used to do for me on our date nights. She was wearing a new dress, a slinky black number I'd never seen before, and she had on red lipstick, a deep, bold, crimson red. The shade she hadn't worn for me in years. She stood there for a moment, checking her reflection in the glass doors of the hotel, and then he walked up behind her. Daniel. He put his hand on the small of her back, a gesture of casual ownership that made my blood run cold. He owned her, and the worst part? She leaned into his touch. She turned and smiled up at him, a radiant, genuine smile that lit up her whole face. A smile I hadn't seen directed at me in what felt like a lifetime. It was a smile of intimacy, of shared secrets. It was the smile of a lover. In that moment, I expected to feel a surge of rage, a tidal wave of grief. I expected to scream, to cry, to get out of the car and confront them. But I felt ... nothing. Just a profound, hollow emptiness. The part of my heart that loved her just went numb, like it had been flash frozen. My hands, which had been shaking all day, were suddenly rock steady. I raised my phone and started recording. I zoomed in on them, on his hand, on her back, on her smiling face. On the way, they walked into the hotel lobby together, their bodies close, their steps synchronized. I recorded it all with the cold, detached precision of a documentarian. Steady hands, dead heart. They disappeared through the revolving doors, swallowed by the warm, golden light of the hotel. They were gone. I sat in my car for another 10 minutes, the silence broken only by the sound of my own breathing. The video played on a loop in my mind. Then a switch flipped. The numbness receded, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I knew what I had to do. I put my phone in my pocket, got out of the car, and walked across the street. The automatic doors slid open, and I stepped into the opulent lobby. Soft music was playing, and the air smelled of expensive perfume and polish. I walked straight up to the front desk. A young clerk with a polite, professional smile looked up at me. "Good evening, sir. How can I help you?" he asked. I took a deep breath, marshaling all my strength to keep my voice even. "Hi," I said, forcing a casual smile of my own. "I'd like an extra key for room 614. My wife. She must have forgotten to leave mine." The clerk typed something into his computer. He glanced at the screen, then back at me. He was checking the reservation. He saw her last name, my last name. It matched. He nodded. "Of course, sir. No problem at all." He turned around, grabbed a blank keycard, and programmed it. He slid it across the cool marble countertop towards me. "Here you go," he said. I picked up the small piece of plastic. It felt impossibly heavy in my hand. This key was more than just a key. It was a point of no return. Holding it, I felt like I was standing on a cliff edge, the wind whipping around me. I had crossed a line, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that I could never go back. The life I had known was over, and a new, uncertain, and terrifying chapter was about to begin. The elevator dinged behind me, its doors sliding open, waiting. It was time. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me for another story time. I hope you're all doing well. Today's story is a tough one, but it's real, and I think a lot of you might connect with it. It's about that moment when everything you believe in just shatters. Let's dive right in. The journey to room 614 felt like it was miles long, even though it was just a hotel hallway. Each step felt heavier than the last, and my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I remember the cheap, patterned carpet and the dim yellow lights overhead, making everything feel surreal, like a scene from a bad movie. My hands were shaking, but I forced them to be still. I had to know. I couldn't live with the doubt for one more second. All the little signs, the late nights at work, the secretive texts she tried to hide, the sudden distance between us. ... It all led me here, to this door. When I finally reached it, I just stood there for a moment, my ear pressed against the cold wood. My own breathing sounded deafening. I was terrified of what I would hear, but even more terrified of not knowing. And then it came. A sound that cut right through me. Laughter, not just any laughter, but carefree, intimate laughter. And then her voice, Jenna's voice. The same voice that told me she loved me every night before we went to sleep. But this time, the words were different. "He'll never find out," she said, her tone light, almost teasing. "He still trusts me." That was it. That was the nail in the coffin. The trust she was so confident in was the very thing she was destroying. My entire world tilted on its axis. In that single sentence, our years together, our shared dreams, our entire life. It all became a lie. I didn't hesitate anymore. I took a deep breath, turned the handle, and pushed the door open. The scene inside was exactly what I'd feared, yet somehow worse. It was a chaotic mess of betrayal. They scrambled away from each other like guilty children caught stealing cookies. Clothes were half on, half off, and their faces went from surprise to a pasty, pale white in a split second. The air was thick with their panic. Jenna, my Jenna, was the first to speak, her voice a stuttering, desperate mess. "Babe, it's not what I can explain." Her eyes were wide with a terror that was almost comical if it was so tragic. She looked at me, then at him, then back at me, as if trying to physically piece together a reality where this wasn't happening. But I wasn't there for explanations. I had all the explanation I needed. I slowly lifted my phone, the screen glowing in the dim hotel room. I didn't need to say a word. The evidence did all the talking. I swiped through the gallery. The photos of them together, looking far too comfortable. The screenshots of their messages, filled with secret plans and words meant only for each other. And finally, the hotel reservation in her name for this very room. Her face crumpled as she saw it all. The flimsy attempt at a lie died on her lips. "You already explained," I said, my voice eerily calm. It didn't even sound like my own. Just not to me. Daniel, the friend she said was just having a hard time, had the decency to look ashamed, at least for a second. He started to mumble something, pulling his shirt on. "Man, I'm sorry I didn't let him finish. I didn't want his fake apology. He wasn't sorry for what he did. He was just sorry he got caught." I looked right past him, my eyes locking onto Jenna one last time. "She's all yours," I said, and the words hung in the air, heavy and final. Then I turned and walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream or throw things or break down. I just left. I left them in their mess, left our shared past in that room, and walked away before they could utter another hollow word. That walk back down the hallway was the loneliest I've ever taken. The next 3 days were a blur. I packed her things. Every shirt, every book, every little trinket that once held a memory now felt like a painful reminder of a life that was no longer mine. I moved through our house like a ghost, methodically erasing her presence. It wasn't about anger or revenge. It was about survival. I had to create a space where I could breathe again. On the 3rd day, she came home, probably expecting a fight, tears, a dramatic confrontation. Instead, she found the quiet hum of the refrigerator and a set of divorce papers neatly laid out on the kitchen table, where we used to have breakfast together. That's when the dam broke. She cried, she begged, she pleaded. She swore it was a mistake, that it meant nothing, that she loved me. The whole predictable script. But her tears couldn't wash away the lies. I listened, not with anger anymore, but with a strange sense of detachment. It was like watching a performance. "Lies don't turn into truth just because you regret them," I told her quietly. I needed her to understand the depth of her betrayal. "You didn't just cheat on me, Jenna. You cheated on the life we built together. You cheated on every promise, every dream, every single I love you. That seemed to finally silence her. Watching her walk out the door with her suitcase was one of the hardest and most liberating moments of my life. As the front door clicked shut, a profound quiet settled over the house. It was a silence that was heavy with pain, yes, but also with peace. It was the sound of an ending, but also the sound of a new beginning. The noise, the anxiety, the constant knot in my stomach that had been my companion for months, it was gone. In that painful, peaceful quiet for the first time in years. I felt free. It was a strange and unfamiliar feeling, but it was mine. And that's where this chapter of my life ends, and a new one begins. It's a painful journey, but it's a necessary one. If you've ever been through something similar, know that you're not alone. The pain is real, but so is the healing. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. Your support means the world to me. If this resonated with you, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.